This is going to be about dairy goats, kind of how to get into it, what the realities of it are, and sort of the opportunities that people can have in entering the dairy goat business or possibly adding them to the current business you have.
Este webinario es para ver, para Cabras Lecheras y para ver si ustedes pueden entrar en este negocio y cosas sobre lo que van a ver con las cabras.
Okay, so a little bit about me. As previously mentioned, my name is Emily Morgan. I'm 23 years old, and my farm, which is called Aiyana's Empire Dairy Goats, is located in Miami, Florida.
Algo de Emily. Emily tiene 23 años, vive en Miami, Florida, y su negocio se llama Aiyana's Empire Dairy Goats.
So some background about how I got involved in this. In college, I went to Florida International University. I studied natural and applied sciences with a certificate in agroecology, which basically means sustainable agriculture. And that's really where I got interested in participating in smaller urban farming.
Algo como la historia de Emily. Ella se graduó de la Universidad Internacional en Florida y tuvo una licenciatura en ciencias naturales y aplicadas con un certificado en agroecología. Y eso significa que ella está interesada en las granjas sostenibles.
And so throughout the years, the ways that I've stayed involved in the dairy goat industry is I'm currently a licensed judge with the American Dairy Goat Association. And then just another little tip about me is I'm also a combat medic in the Army Reserve. And here are just some pictures of what I do with my business and the workshops we've done and things like that.
Ella es está licenciado como juez en ADGA y algo interesante es ella es un médico de combate en las reservas del ejército y ahí están unas fotos de lo que hace allí.
Here's just some organization for the presentation today. First, we're going to talk about goat dairying. What does that mean? How does it differ from cow dairies? And then the potential in dairy goats, some of the uniqueness about them. Then we're going to talk about goat husbandry or how to care for them if you don't have them already, sort of ways to get involved, and then creating the farm model that makes sense for you, whether you'd like to have a business or if you just want it for your own home dairy.
Lo que vamos a hacer hoy es de empezar con la lechería de las cabras, cómo se puede y cómo son diferentes que las vacas, la potencial en una lechera de cabras y si quieren empezar con las cabras, cómo se puede cuidar a las cabras y por fin cómo se puede hacer lo que es específico a los sentidos que usted quiere.
So first, let's talk about why goats might be the right option for you. One is that they're easier to handle than cows, right? They're smaller. They aren't as dangerous for maybe people who aren't as experienced with animals. They have a little bit more realistic milk yield, so they're better for smaller operations as well.
Entonces, empezamos con la cuestión, porque podemos tener cabras y en el principio las cabras son más fácil de manejar que las vacas porque son más chiquitos, etcétera. Y la producción de la leche es más realista para operaciones más pequeñas.
They're also more approachable financially. There's a lot less equipment required in terms of restraining them, milking them. There's a lot less land required per animal, and of course they eat a lot less as well.
Son más fácil para empezar con las cabras porque financieramente es más fácil, no hay que tener tanto dinero, menos equipo está requerido y menos tierra también, y comen menos también.
Some of the differences as well are in the nutrition of the actual milk. So goats produce A2 milk, which we'll talk about later. Their milk is naturally homogenized instead of cow milk needing it to go through that process. And it's also more digestible to people with sensitivities to milk.
Hay diferencias nutricionales también. Todas las cabras producen leche A2 y vamos a hablar sobre eso un poco más antes. La leche está homogeneizada naturalmente y es más fácil para digerir para personas con sensibilidades.
And then the last real big difference is herd management is much easier. A lot of people are willing to purchase goats for pets, or home dairying has become more popular. So it's a lot easier to maintain whatever size herd you're looking for in comparison to some sort of cattle operation.
Y la última cosa es que hay muchas más oportunidades para venderlos porque personas se pueden comprar las cabras para mascotas o para otras cosas porque no son tan grandes como vacas.
Okay, and this is where we're really going to talk about the difference between cow dairies and goat dairies. These are just sort of the numbers that I wanted to talk about. So that first line there, you see a cow is going to be producing 53 pounds of milk per day on average, while a goat produces 6 to 8 pounds. This is much more reasonable for a small family or people who want to sell to local shops. So it's a lot easier to handle.
Aquí vamos a hablar directamente de las diferencias entre vacas y cabras. Se puede ver que las vacas producen 53 libras de leche por día y las cabras producen 6 a 8 libras. Y en esto es más fácil para una familia de usar.
And then going back to how much they eat, a cow eats between 40 and 64 pounds of feed of a mixed ration with hay, whereas a goat will probably eat between 4 and 12 pounds depending on breed. So again, this means we need less storage space for food, less storage space for the feed, and all of the other equipment. So it really does make more sense for those smaller type operations.
Y en el segundo se puede ver que las vacas comen 40 hasta 64 libras de una ración mixta y forraje cada día. Y las cabras nada más 4 a 12 libras. Y en esto no necesita tanto espacio para poner la comida y tener la comida, y también cuesta menos para cuidarles.
And then the thing a lot of people don't want to talk about, but the manure, right? When you have animals, that means you're going to have waste. And so things to consider are the average cow produces 80 pounds of manure each day for one cow versus a goat or a sheep that produces closer to 40. So that means that your waste management, again, is going to be much easier for smaller operations as well.
Otra cosa de considerar es que las vacas producen 80 libras de estericol cada día y las cabras nada más 40 libras. Entonces, para manejar la estericol es más fácil con más cabras.
So talking a little bit more about the differences nutritionally with the goat milk, and this was based off of a really elaborate study that was done on goat milk. One of them is there's a larger variety of amino acids, so there's more proteins in the milk in comparison to cow milk or other dairy milk that's available.
Hablando como la nutrición que está disponible para la leche de la cabra, tiene una mayor variedad de aminoácidos en comparación con la leche de la vaca y otras leches no lácteas.
Other properties are they have better emulsifying properties, which is why typically you're going to find goat milk soap products, goat milk lotion, goat milk lip balms. It emulsifies better with oils. And this is also why you'll find a lot of people will say that the goat milk butter is creamier, the goat milk cheese is creamier. It's all because of those emulsifying properties.
Las propiedades emocionantes significa que la leche de la cabra es más fácil para hacer lociones, jabones, etc. Y dicen que eso es mejor para hacer esos.
Additionally, because of the more amino acids and that it has those emulsifying properties, it's typically more digestible for anybody who might have a lactose issue or who may not be able to digest those proteins in cow milk.
También porque es más digerible, es más fácil para personas que tienen sensibilidades para cosas en la leche de la vaca.
And another one is the easy gelation, which basically means that it holds texture a little bit better than cow milk will. So essentially what happens is the fatty acids are able to encapsulate that liquid portion of the milk better. So the yogurt and the cheeses are going to keep their texture better in comparison to cow milk or cashew milk or any of those other types of milk alternatives.
Lo que es más importante también es que es más fácil para la gelificación y eso significa que lo que quiere en las yogur y quesos, etcétera, se queda así en vez de cambiar como lo de la vaca.
And I'll put these two together because they kind of go together. So the stronger buffering capacity is in relation to that it has lower lactose. So lactose is the sugar that most people are allergic to or unable to digest. That's in cow milk. And since it's lower in lactose, it's easier for younger children, older people to digest, and it actually creates a buffer in their stomach. So instead of it just being able to be digested, it is additionally, it's better for their stomach, and it helps buffer their stomach acid as well.
Estas dos cosas vamos a hablar sobre juntos. La menor contenido de lactosa es un apoyo para el estómago de personas, los niños y también las personas más mayores, y más que es digerible, también es algo que protege el estómago.
And then lastly, it contains immunomodulatory properties, which essentially means that it helps people who have immunodeficits. It somehow, that is still not perfectly researched, but it has been found to regulate people with immunity disorders as well.
También se puede poner algo para arreglar el estómago de personas y el cuerpo de personas que tiene problemas con inmunomoduladores.
So here, this is just something for you guys to look at, for us to go through in terms of the nutritional composition. So you'll see that goat milk is higher in calorie, it's higher in protein, and in fat is kind of comparable to human milk, but it is higher as well in cow milk. So you'll find that it is more nutrient dense, right? Because we're seeing it's also higher in calcium, phosphorus, potassium. Really, all of these important minerals, you'll find goat milk is higher in per serving compared to cow milk.
Aquí estamos hablando de la composición de la leche y se puede ver que la leche de la cabra está más alta de todas las cosas de la vaca o de las personas. Y se puede ver que la energía, proteínas, la grasa, etcétera, todos son más altas de la leche de la vaca.
Okay, so now, you understand what makes goats different, why they're important in our agricultural industry. So now I want to talk about the potential with having goats and how you can kind of use them for your small operation.
Como ya hemos visto que son las diferencias entre cabras y vacas en su operación, y aquí vamos a hablar un poco más del potencial de las cabras.
The most important thing to be considered is finding your niche market, right? There are very few large goat dairies in the United States, and really in other countries, goat dairying is very popular. So we're kind of in this budding part of time where goat milk products are increasing in popularity, but we don't necessarily have the people to meet that demand. So find how you can fit, and this list that we'll go over will help you find how you can do that.
Aquí estamos viendo cómo se puede encontrar tu nicho en el mercado. En los Estados Unidos no hay muchas lecheras de cabras grandes, como en Europa hay más. Pero en el momento estamos en medio de eso y por lo mientras estamos viendo algo más pequeño.
Okay, so first thing, of course, the easiest way is liquid milk sales. So this means you're selling a gallon of milk, a quart of milk to a store or at a local farmer's market. The only thing to make sure that you understand is your state laws, because some states will allow you to sell raw milk, some will not. So that will all depend on your state and city laws on selling liquid milk.
Lo más fácil es de vender la leche líquida y eso es más fácil. Aquí estamos hablando de viendo una botella grande o chica de leche, pero lo importante es de revisar las leyes de su estado, porque hay diferencias en cada estado.
Other things that you guys can consider are cottage milk products, or these are, in Florida, they're called cottage products, meaning they're, made in the home. They're not, they don't necessarily need to go through an additional process. These are things like cajeta, or basically caramel that you make with the milk, any fudge where you use the goat milk as an ingredient, or truffles, basically baked goods that can be used with goat milk are very easy to sell, and people really love them.
Otra cosa que se puede hacer es de hacer productos lácteos caseros. Eso significa que es algo que está hecho en la casa y no hay necesidad para otro proceso, como cajeta o dulces o trufas.
The next one is fermented products, and these are increasingly becoming more popular. So some examples are kefir, yogurt. These are really easy to make, but again, you have to check your state laws because some states or some areas allow the sales of this for human consumption, and some say that you need to have an animal consumption only sticker on it. So just check that out, but otherwise fermented products are really popular.
Los productos fermentados como kéfir y yogures son más y más popular, pero también tiene que revisar las leyes de su estado porque unos requieren que dicen que eso es un producto para animales, etcétera, y no hay que revisar eso para asegurar que está siguiendo las leyes de su estado.
The next one is really popular. I think everyone can recognize goat cheese. What's really important about this one, though, is there's a lot of opportunity with this. You can make your own type of cheese. There's very few goat cheeses on the market, you know, in Publix or in a normal grocery store. So this one in particular has a very good chance for you guys to get creative if that's something you'd like to do.
Lo que sigue son los quesos y todos saben que son los quesos de cabras, pero se puede ser muy creativo en eso porque se puede hacerlo en cualquier manera para tener su queso específico.
Another one is goat grazing. I'm sure you guys have heard of it before, but this would work potentially for people who have small herds of their own at their house. Basically what it is people will hire your herd to manage their landscape. And, you know, this is a really good way to make money. It's a good way to bring awareness to your farm as well.
Sí, y lo que sigue es un pastoreo de cabras, y lo que significa es si tiene un rebaño chico, alguien se puede rentar sus cabras para cuidar sus pastores.
And then the most popular one, and one that I do in my area, is goat yoga. It's an amazing way to make sure your babies are socialized. It's a great way to talk about what you do, talk about your products, and it really brings a lot of money as well. And it's very fun.
Lo que hago en mi negocio es yoga con cabras, y eso es una buena manera para socializar sus cabras, y también puedo hablar sobre lo que hago en mi negocio, y también todo eso es muy divertido.
So the next one that might require more investment up front is, you can make money off of your genetics, right? So if you buy animals from the top genetics and then you sell their semen, for example, or you sell their offspring, then that will be a good way to make that money back, and it will establish you as a breeder and have a potential money flow, as you continue to have your kidding season, which you'd have to have anyway.
Otra cosa que se puede hacer, pero requiere un invertido un poco más grande, se puede involucrarse en la genética. Por ejemplo, así se puede comprar genética de lo mejor, y se puede vender el semen y también después los niños de su rebaño.
Some other ways that farms across the country have been able to make money as well is farm tours and classes. If you find that everybody loves your truffles or your cajeta or your kefir, I would, host some classes, have people pay per ticket. And that's a great way for you to make money, talk about your product, get people to go to your farm, and really get yourself more involved in the community.
Otra cosa que se puede hacer es de tener personas visitando a su granja, por ejemplo, clases o cualquier cosa. Y también si las personas les gusta la cajeta que hace o las dulces, etcétera, se puede tener una clase, en su granja. Y es una buena manera de ganar más dinero.
And then lastly, as I spoke about earlier, goat milk is really good for emulsifying with oils, which means that it's great for skincare. And the kind of the new trend right now is to have more natural based skincare. So I personally, in my business, we sell soap, we sell lotions. I've seen some people make candles with the goat milk. I've seen some people make lip balm. There's a lot of opportunity there to sell skincare as well.
También otra cosa que se puede hacer es de hacer jabones o otras cosas para el cuidado de la piel. Eso es algo que hago en mi negocio y hay mucha popularidad en las cosas que se puede usar en la piel, que son cosas naturales. Y entonces hay mucha popularidad en esta cosa. Jabones, lociones, etc.
So we've talked about why goats are different. We've talked about different ways that you can make the decision financially sound for you and how you can, develop a business to some degree. So now we're going to talk about getting the goat and the best option for starting your herd.
Antes hablamos de las diferencias entre cabras y vacas y también que necesitan cada uno y cómo se puede tener su nicho en este negocio. Y ahora vamos a hablar cómo se puede empezar.
So my suggestion would be to get breeds that are recognized by the American Dairy Goat Association. One, I think they are, because they're bred for dairying, they're going to have more milk production. They're going to fit your needs much better. So I would suggest getting a breed that is recognized by the American Dairy Goat Association.
Mi sugerencia es para ustedes de obtener una raza que está reconocido por el ADGA y porque estas razas se van a producir más leche y por eso va a estar más apropiada para eso.
Additionally, it kind of helps you check off one of the boxes I talked about in the previous slide, right? So if the breed is recognized and registered with the American Dairy Goat Association, you can inherently sell those offspring for a little bit more money and put a little bit more worth to the animals that you have in your herd.
Una cosa que es importante es que si la raza está reconocido por la ADGA, se puede tener más valor sus cabras y se pueden usarlos para lo que hemos hablado.
So before you do this, I would ask yourself a few questions. So what are my goals? Do I just want to feed myself? Do I want to start a business? So then what traits am I looking for? Do I want small goats for my kids to play with, or am I looking for goats that are big and going to be able to make a lot of milk?
Okay, antes de empezar, de comprar algo, hay que hacer unas preguntas. ¿Cuáles son mis objetivos? Estas cabras son para nada más mi familia, para mascotas, para mis niños. ¿Para qué cosas estoy buscando? ¿Qué características? Y quiero molestarme con las acciones registradas. Quiero tener cabras que tengo que registrar con la asociación.
Additionally, I would ask, are there a lot of that breed in my area? So if there's a lot of alpines, maybe do you want to be different, or do you want to be dissimilar with other people, or do you even want to not bother with that, right? Do you just want to get what you have available? Those type of questions, what are your goals, is really important.
Okay. También se puede preguntar si hay muchos de alpines en su área. Quiero tener esos o quiero ser diferente, quiero tener otras cosas diferentes que lo que hay mucho en la área.
So some, just so you guys can sort of get to know how the different breeds work, the Saanen and the Alpine, which I'll show in a picture in the next slide, they're really known for the most production, but they have average components. So if I were to be looking for an operation just to sell liquid milk, this might be the breeds that I'm looking for. Their components are not best for cheese making or yogurt or things like that.
El Saanen y Alpine, son razas que están conocidos por su mayor producción de leche, pero en el promedio de componentes, no son tan buenos para hacer jabones y otras cosas así.
Then the Nubian and the La Mancha are known for having higher milk components. So a lot of people who have those breeds will be people who make cheese, make the cajeta, actually making products with the milk. And additionally, Nubian goats have always served as dual purpose. So they also were used for meat goats as well.
Las personas que tienen Nubia y La Mancha están conocidos por sus altos componentes lácteos y entonces se puede hacer productos con su leche. Y también las cabras nubias han servido como doble propósito porque se usan para su carne también.
And then the very popular ones that I get asked about all the time are the Nigerian dwarf goats. Those are the smaller ones, the little miniature ones. These are really good for a small family farm, maybe with young kids, or older people, maybe people who aren't in the best physical shape. These are some of the best animals. But of course, if they're smaller, their production will also be down. But their components are very high. So it's kind of a catch-22.
Okay. Una raza que me preguntan muchas veces son las cabras enanas nigerianas. Y estos son los más pequeños, las cabras más pequeñas en tamaño y también van a tener menos producción, pero muchas personas les gustan como mascotas para sus familias, etcétera, y son buenos para eso.
And these are just pictures here. It says Alpine La Mancha. It says all of their names here. And you can see the production range, right? So, I'm sorry about the siren. You see here the Alpine. Sorry, go ahead.
Se puede ver aquí las fotos de las razas diferentes y también se puede ver el rango de su producción.
And then just here you can kind of see some of my goats here. This white one, she's a Saanen. And then I have a La Mancha here over to the right.
Estos son unos de mis cabras. Aquí en el derecho, no, en la izquierda tiene un Saanen que es mío y también otra es La Mancha.
So now we're going to talk about the basics of caring for dairy goats. I didn't want to get too specific. I just sort of wanted to go over the general things that I think everybody should know before getting into goats.
No voy a decir muchos detalles, pero quiero poner algo general que necesitas saber para cuidar cabras lecheras?
So the first thing is goats are browsers. They are not grazers. So a lot of people think that, you know, if they put goats on a patch of grass, they're going to eat it. They actually really don't like eating off the ground. They are more likely to eat bushes and trees.
Las cabras son ramoneadoras, no herbívoras, y entonces las cabras no les gusta comer cerca la tierra, les gusta más las cosas más altas.
The other thing is that they don't handle rain and wind very well. A lot of cattle operations don't have shelter in a lot of their pastures because cattle handle it very well. They're fine getting wet. They're fine being cold and getting wind. But goats really do not do well. So a shelter of some sort with insulation is required if you're going to maintain a healthy herd.
Las cabras no manejan la lluvia y el viento bien, como las en unas granjas que tiene vacas, no tiene refugio para las vacas porque no es tan necesario, pero es vital en una granja con cabras porque ellos lo necesitan completamente.
The other is that goats are herd animals. So a lot of people, you know, I do suggest goats for a smaller type of operations, but they still need companions. So having one goat is not enough the way you might be able to have one cow. So you need at least 2 to 3 goats in order for them to really not be destructive or have a healthy social and mental wellness.
Las cabras son animales de rebaño, entonces, aunque estoy diciendo que es algo que puede tener que es un poco más pequeño, no se puede aceptar de tener una cabra. Hay que tener, cada cabra necesita compañeras, para socializar, etcétera.
Additionally, they can breed very young. So it's very important to make sure that if you are going to have a male and a female together, that they are separated. In a lot of other animals like horses and cows, usually they can be pretty old, maybe almost a year old before they can breed, but some goats can breed as fast as 8 weeks of age.
Las cabras se pueden reproducirse muy joven, entonces si tiene cabras, hembras y machos, tiene que separarles porque se pueden reproducir como a 8 semanas. Entonces, como vacas y caballos, necesitan como 1 año antes de que se pueden reproducir, pero las cabras no.
Also, they are, as I'm sure you've seen online and videos, is they can be very mischievous. So you need to have durable fencing that can handle them. You need to make sure that they are properly enclosed. If there's a hole in your fence, they will find it.
Okay. Como han visto en los videos o en cualquier parte, se puede ver que las cabras son muy traviesos. Entonces es muy importante que tiene una cerca muy duradera para que no se pueden escapar. Si hay una manera de escapar, ellos van a verlo.
Also, you know, we're talking about dairy goats, which are going to be used for some sort of food product, whether even if you're making soap or something like that, it's important to understand that there are certain diseases goats can carry, such as CAE, CL, and Yonis. And so it's important if you do get an animal that you ask whoever you're getting them from about these diseases, their exposure to them, and things like that.
De cualquier persona que de donde compra su cabra o cabras, hay que entender que las cabras pueden tener enfermedades como CAE, CL o Jones. Y entonces es muy importante que pregunta a las personas de quien compra esas cosas si han estado, han tenido la oportunidad de encontrar esas enfermedades.
And then the last thought that is important to keep in mind when we're thinking about dairy goats is that in order for them to produce milk, they have to breed, right? So they have to have kids. This means you need to somehow either have a buck at your farm or find someone close to you that's willing to share, or possibly buy a doe that's already pregnant. So these are some sort of things that take a little bit of prior planning, in addition to, of course, dealing with the kids, right? If she's going to give birth with you, then that means that you need to decide how you want to raise the kids in order to also have milk.
Si quieres ordeñar una cabra, es importante que entiende que necesita criar para tener la leche. Entonces, su granja posiblemente necesita incluir machos y algo para criar a los niños. Entonces, es algo que necesita planear antes, que cómo va a manejar eso. Y también si no quiere un macho en su granja, posiblemente tiene un vecino que quiere compartir su macho, o como sea, pero hay que planear eso.
And here are just some pictures of, different ways that people house their goats, kind of like how I mentioned the fencing and things like that. So this one on the top left here is, you can see somebody made it out of pallets. You don't need a lot of equipment. You don't need a huge barn. This is sort of what I mean, as long as they have some sort of shelter. And then that other top right, you can see the fencing there. It's just normal chain link fence, and it seems to be holding them well.
Estas son fotos de cómo alguien está cuidando a sus cabras. En la primera foto, no es nada muy grande, ni es algo muy que cuesta mucho, pero es algo donde puede tener refugio las cabras. Y la segunda foto, se puede ver la cerca que está ahí, el cerco, perdón, y se puede ver que sirve muy bien, funciona muy bien.
And then these bottom two pictures, you can see on that bottom left, this is more of a production type barn. There seems to be a bunch of animals in there, but that's just another way that they're containing those animals. I just wanted you guys to kind of see a variety of how these barns work, whether you're planning to have a big barn or a small barn. And then that other photo to the right there, that's just sort of me showing that all that grass is there and those goats don't care about it. They just want the bush that's up there.
La foto abajo, puede ver una cosa muy grande con muchas cabras, y sí, eso existe, pero no es necesario de tener tantas cabras para tener un negocio donde se puede ganar. Y la otra foto, se puede ver que hay mucho foraje abajo, mucho pasto, pero las cabras no quieren, les gusta lo que está más arriba.
Okay, so going into the nutrition, like I said, we're not going to go into specific diets right now because we're all kind of coming from different places and it really does depend. But the primary thing is that goats are ruminants. So they have a 4-chamber stomach, which is different from ours.
No vamos a hablar mucho sobre la nutrición o las dietas de las cabras, porque todos somos en una parte diferente o una parte diferente. Y entonces lo importante es de entender que las cabras son animales que son rumiantes, entonces tienen 4 partes de su estómago.
So because they have this 4-part stomach, their digestive function is by microbial activity, which basically means that for our digestion, it's acid that breaks down our food. Sorry. But what helps with their digestive function is the microbes. So it's very important that they always have grass or hay in front of them.
Lo que es importante en eso es que para nosotros el ácido en nuestros estómagos es lo que se puede hacer la función digestiva, pero en la cabra es una actividad microbiana, entonces es necesario que ellos tienen enfrente de ellos algún tipo de forraje.
Additionally, just some forage examples to think about are that alfalfa or peanut hay is always preferred for milk production, but grass hays perform well also. So this is just sort of to indicate that there are a bunch of different ways to feed them, but always forage is the most important.
Se puede ver que hay unas forrajes diferentes como alfalfa o lo del nuez, pero lo que es muy importante en eso es que ellos tienen forraje enfrente de ellos todo el tiempo.
So on the right side of the slide in that black portion, you'll see I just wrote down all the different ways that I've seen some people feed their animals. So we can just go over a few of them. One is hay with concentrate, which is the normal food with hay. Others use hay with minerals, and others just have them on pasture on, their land, eating everything that's there.
En este lado de la pantalla, se puede ver, yo tengo estos cubos con las maneras en que he visto que están dando comida a sus cabras. Por ejemplo, el heno con concentrado o heno con concentrada con vara mineral o nada más con pasto afuera.
That next row there is some people will have hay with free choice mineral, and that's a little different from a mineral bar because that means they have each individual mineral available. The other one is hay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
En el primer cubo se puede ver heno con mineral de libre elección y eso es un poco diferente que un cubo de mineral, porque así se puede tener todos los minerales individuales.
Some people have access to hay with a custom ration, depending on where they are, and then others only feed hay of the highest quality that make it constantly available to them.
Unas personas se usan el heno con la ración más mejor para ellos y otros no.
The other, that final row there is hay cubes. So in some places, they cannot get that hay that we're all used to seeing, in the big bales. They need them to come in cubes. So they will have that with a concentrate or with grain. Others will have a total mixed ration, which is where the hay is mixed with the concentrate or the grain. And then the last one there I saw was some people will have a liquid mineral available to their goats as well.
Hay 3 cosas abajo, de vez en cuando no es accesible de tener el heno normal y entonces se usan cubos de heno con concentrado o una ración mixta que tiene el heno dentro de la mixta o heno con mineral líquido, entonces ya está parte del heno.
And then, of course, all of those options can be mixed, and different people have access to different things based off of where they are. If you are in an urban area, you might not be able to get a custom ration. If you are close to a mill, maybe you can. Basically, I just wanted to show that it's very easy, or not very easy, but it's very accessible to feed your animals in a different way.
Lo que quiero enseñar aquí es que dependiendo en donde vive, por ejemplo, si vive cerca a una ciudad o vive cerca a un lugar donde se pueden hacer la comida para ellos, otras cosas están más disponibles y entonces se puede combinar o usar cualquier de esas opciones.
All right, so here I just kind of wanted to talk about the schedule and the lifestyle of having dairy goats. It's very different in comparison to having animals that you raise for meat.
La vida horario de las cabras es muy diferente que las cabras que están criando para su carne.
So the primary thing that actually has also people who have bought goats from me then give them back to me because they find it's a lot of work is that milking is every day. When they are in the lactation, you have to milk them every day. And 12 hours is ideal, but there are no days off when it comes to milking.
Unas personas que compran cabras de mí, de vez en cuando regresan las cabras porque entienden que es mucho trabajo. Cuando está ordeñando una cabra, hay que hacerlo diariamente. No se puede tener un día de vacación cuando está ordenando. Lo ideal es separar las ordeñas por 12 horas, pero es todos los días, son todos los días.
And I don't mean to say that to scare you guys off. I just always like for everyone to understand that dairy animals do require a little bit more of that daily upkeep. So it is important, in terms of planning. I'm not saying to not take vacations. I'm just saying that there just might be a little bit more planning involved and training people to do things while you're gone.
No estoy tratando de darles miedo por eso. Nada más es necesario de entender que hay que planear. No es que nunca se puede tener una vacación, pero de todos modos tiene que planear y entrenar a alguien de hacer algo si no está ahí.
The other thing is bottle raising kids. So typically, if you're going to be milking these animals, you will usually separate the kids from their mom, and you will milk the parents and then feed the babies on the bottle. So you have to consider that as well. Those are other things you have to do. And that just keeps the mammary system healthy, and it makes sure that the kids are friendly and socialized when they get older.
Otra cosa de considerar es que cuando tiene los niños, ellos están separados de su mamá, y se puede ordenar la mamá y darle con biberón a los niños. Entonces es necesario de pensar en eso también.
And then, of course, there's equipment maintenance. Unless you are using your hands to milk, of course, or hand milking, you have to maintain your milk machine. If you end up getting a bulk tank or things like that, that equipment will need maintenance because in theory you'd be using it every day. So those are just little things to keep in mind.
Otra cosa de considerar es que necesita mantener el equipo. Si está usando algo más que las manos, va a necesitar máquinas para la leche o posiblemente un tanque, etcétera. Y eso es algo que tiene que mantener diariamente.
And then lastly is product handling. So making sure your area is clean at all times, because remember, this is a food product. So you're going to want to make sure all your dishes are clean, all of your milking areas are clean at all times, especially if you are going to be selling the milk raw. It's really important that you just keep the entire, the animals clean, the facilities that they live in. So cleanliness is very important because it's an agricultural product.
Como ese es un producto agricultor, es muy importante que mantiene la área donde está haciendo la ordeña y donde pone los productos muy, muy limpio. No debe de tener nada de sucio ahí. Es muy importante que está muy limpio.
And then this is just a photo of one of my older girls here. Her name is Cicely. That's just her saying hi to everybody.
Esto es una foto de mi cabra que se llama Cicely y ella está saludando a ustedes.
So the final, portion I want you guys to leave this presentation with is developing a business plan and understanding ways to empower yourself, even if it's just for your family, to make sure that it's worth, the money that you're going to be putting in and the time as well.
Por fin, necesita desarrollar un plan para su negocio, si es para su familia o si se va a vender cosas o cómo va a hacerlo, tiene que desarrollar un plan.
So again, this is when you have to ask yourself questions or see what you are interested in doing. So what am I interested in selling? Maybe you really like baking, or maybe you really are interested in making cheese, or you want to go more into culinary, culinary arts. When you think about that, then you'll understand what you would like to sell, and that can propel your business plan.
Aquí necesita hacer unas preguntas otra vez. ¿Qué me interesa vender? Me gusta cocinar o me gusta hacer productos de la leche, o qué quiero hacer.
The next one is, which will really dictate how much time and how much money you will be putting into this project of yours, is which management practices do you want to adopt, right? There are regenerative ways of housing dairy goats. There are more commercial ways, like in the photos I showed you guys. Do you want to go grade A and have your milk in stores? Or are you more interested in an agrotourism, where most of your money or most of your business is in relation to the goat yoga and the goat grazing? You have to find which management you'd like to adopt.
Necesitas saber qué tipo de negocio quiere tener. Hay una manera de tener algo regenerativo, comercial, más grande. Quiere tener leche que es grado A, o tal vez su dinero va a venir de agroturismo.
And then, of course, the last two kind of come hand in hand, is how much time am I willing to put into this and how much will this cost me? I think those two are very important, because do you more so enjoy the sales portion? Do you more so enjoy the product? And if that's the case, maybe you need to hire someone to do the goat part, or maybe you only like to do the goat part, but you want to hire someone to make the cheese. So understanding those levels of where you personally want to be involved in this farm venture is really important.
Las últimas dos preguntas, ¿cuánto tiempo y cuánto me costará? Son importantes, porque así van a decidir qué tipo de plan para su negocio quiere tener. Tal vez usted le gusta el producto, le gusta ser parte del producto en vez de parte de las cabras, etcétera. Entonces, tal vez va a necesitar emplear a alguien de cuidar a las cabras o etcétera. Usted tiene que decidir qué es la parte del negocio que a usted le gusta.
So that's the final part. I just wanted to leave you guys kind of understanding how the dairy goat industry works and the different ways that you can be a part of it, whether you are a big farmer or a small farmer interested in making cheese or making fudge, there's a place for you. And so I just kind of wanted to go over that. And of course, thank you guys for listening. And of course, if you have any questions, I'm open.
Muchas gracias a todos para participar. Yo quise tener la oportunidad de decirle que hay una parte del negocio de las cabras en que usted puede participar si es grande o es pequeño. Hay un lugar donde puede participar en el negocio con las cabras. Si tiene preguntas, por cierto, puede preguntar. Okay, we have one question in the chat. It says, ¿cuánto espacio se necesita por cabra? Or how much space does each goat need?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think, again, that goes into, that's where the breeds are really a good option, because you can have maybe 3 or 4 of the miniature, the Nigerian dwarf, in a space where you could only have 1 or 2 of the larger breeds. I would say at least, a quarter acre for 3 goats, I think is, that's handleable, a quarter acre, half acre for 3 goats.
Okay. Eso depende en la raza de las cabras. Por ejemplo, si va a tener un cabra mini como nigeriana, no se lo necesita tanto espacio. Yo creo que para las razas más grandes necesita un cuarto de acre para 2 o 3 cabras.
Do we have any more questions?
Otra persona dijo gracias nada más. Thank you.
De nada.
Emily, I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
When you were talking about getting your goats, or like when things to ask the breeders, where would someone start of like finding a good breeder, or like, is it a Facebook group? Do you talk to a vet? Mi pregunta es sobre dónde conseguir las cabras del principio, con qué organización te estás conectando, es un grupo de Facebook, dónde consigues tu primer cabra.
So I would actually say Facebook groups, that you mentioned that, is where I have found most of my goats. So I think that's where a lot of goat people are located. I think that's a little bit better than a vet, just because sometimes the vets don't know, they're probably working with a lot of pet owners and things like that, and they may not, be aware that are dairy people around. So I would say Facebook is the way to go for sure.
Su respuesta era que busca en Facebook, que tal vez es el mejor lugar de buscar, porque si está preguntando a los veterinarios, de vez en cuando ellos no saben, porque están tratando más con mascotas, etcétera, y tal vez no saben dónde están las cabras lecheras.
Additionally, if anyone goes on to the American Dairy Goat Association website, there is a member registry, and so they can look based off of their state. So they can find people that are in their state that have goats.
también se puede ir el sitio de web de ADGA y así se puede ver personas en cada estado.
We have another question. Me imagino que hay una diferencia en crear cabras en Florida y Iowa. ¿Qué usted piensa? He's assuming that there is a difference in growing or raising goats in Iowa versus Florida. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So I have to focus on heat control, right? Because I live in basically the tropics, so it's always hot and wet. And I would assume you guys have to worry about the opposite, right? So I feel like you guys maybe have to worry about dry and cold. But I think the principle is the same. I need the shelter that I mentioned before to keep the wind and rain out and the heat, and you guys will need the same shelter for, you know, that heat insulation. So I'm sorry, I know this is long, but I know other than, you know, maybe you guys have to have heated watering systems and things like that, I really don't see the principles being very different of management.
Por cierto, hay una diferencia entre creciendo o cuidando cabras en Florida versus Iowa. Pero los principales son iguales. Yo necesito cuidar las cabras porque yo vivo en un lugar trópico. Y entonces yo necesito cuidar que ellos estoy manejando el calor y ustedes están tal vez tienen que manejar el frío, pero de todos modos necesitan un refugio bien para las cabras.
And then I see another question about, do we see dairy goats growing as a business? Yes, there is not, at least where I am personally, I cannot supply the amount of demand that there is, and it just keeps getting more and more popular for the reasons I mentioned before. So a lot of people who think that they can't have any dairy milk are realizing that goat milk is the right option for them. So it's becoming, you know, much more popular.
Había otra pregunta si el negocio de las cabras lecheras está creciendo y Emily dice que sí, está, yo no puedo tener suficiente para todas las personas que quieren y está más y más popular porque hay personas que pensaban que no pudieran tener animales más grandes y entonces las cabras es algo más popular.
Additionally, it's actually used a lot in pet food products as well. So I would say half of my customers buy goat milk for raising puppies, or it's used a lot as a formula for, I've raised horses on goat's milk as well. So it's also being used in the pet sector as well.
También están usando la leche en comida para mascotas, por ejemplo, para caballos y otras mascotas, están usando la leche para cuidarles.
Great. If we don't have any more questions, I don't know if there's like a clapping feature on the webinar one, but thank you so much, Emily.
Hay otra pregunta. ¿Qué te genera más dinero? No sé exactamente qué está refiriendo. Valeria, ¿me ayuda?
Yeah. I'm assuming it's maybe like what, like enterprise or what, like
qué
value
parte.
added.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say agrotourism is going to, the joke we have is that agrotourism feeds the goats, because that goat yoga, the goat grazing I talked about, those classes. So in my opinion, what actually makes the most money is those agrotourism parts, and that's what helps you build the beautiful barn you need for the milk and things like that. So in reality, that's what makes more money.
Lo que genera más dinero, aparentemente es las cosas de agroturismo, por ejemplo, la goat yoga, etcétera, cosas así. Y así se puede construir su casa grande para las cabras. Okay, the last question was, where do you see your business going?
That's a good question. So I do want to go grade A. Right now, I sell under a pet license or for animal consumption only. So my farm would, in theory, go grade A, so it'd be much larger. Right now, I only have about 25 goats. I'd like to, increase that to maybe 80 to 100 head. And I will keep including the agritourism parts that I mentioned earlier. So farm tours, cheese classes. Right now, I only do the goat yoga, but I definitely like to dip into those as well. I just need to buy land first.
Yo quiero tener mi leche grado A. Ahorita está clasificado como para leche para mascotas o comida para mascotas nada más. Y quiero tener como, bueno, ahorita nada más tengo como 25 cabras y quiero tener 80 o hasta 100, pero vamos a ver cuándo puedo hacer eso. Y también quiero entrar en haciendo quesos, etcétera. Y por lo mientras estoy haciendo goat yoga y también voy a tener clases, etcétera, para eso. Pero voy a continuar con agroturismo también.
Excellent. I don't think I see any more questions. No creo que veo más preguntas. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for our first winter webinar. And thank you so much, Emily and Leanne, for presenting and interpreting. And then tune in for next week. I think there's a new message. Thank you, Susan. And yeah, we'll tune in for next week at the same time. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.